Welcome to This Explainer. We usually think of the space age as this bright, triumphant era of human achievement, right? Well, today, we are stepping away from the sunshine and directly into the deepest shadows of the Cold War. We're going to look at a deeply unsettling historical mystery. So maybe lower the lights a bit, because we are about to explore a genuinely dark, eerie chapter of the space race. It's the kind of thing that might just completely change how you view history. So let me ask you something. Was Yuri Gagarin just the first astronaut who actually survived? Think about that for a second. We are all taught this very clean, very specific version of the space race. But what if the man we celebrate as the ultimate pioneer wasn't the first human to cross the threshold of space at all? What if he was simply the first one to make it back alive? Section 1. The Space Age Illusion and the Golden Icon of 1961. To really understand the gravity of this whole mystery, we've got to start with the official, sanitized narrative, April 12, 1961. That's the day Yuri Gagarin became a global icon and secured a monumental victory for the USSR. Which brings us to Section 2, the Lost Cosmonauts theory and secrets behind the Iron Curtain. Because, you see, that flawless official narrative eventually began to crap. Early spaceflight was incredibly experimental. They were pushing the absolute limits of human endurance. So let's define exactly what we're dealing with here. The core premise of the Lost Cosmonauts theory is, well, it's chilling. It's the hypothesis that the Soviet Union launched multiple manned space missions before Gagarin ever stepped foot in a rocket. But because the technology was totally untested, these missions ended in catastrophic disasters. And under the suffocating strictness of the Iron Curtain, the Soviet government allegedly just covered up the failures, completely erasing these doomed astronauts from state records, literally acting as if they never existed. Section 3. The eerie intercepts and the eavesdroppers of Turin. Now, a theory is just a theory without evidence, right? And the most chilling evidence here didn't come from some leaked government document. It came from two Italian amateur radio operators, the Giudica Cordelia brothers. Back in the late 1950s, these two brothers built a highly sophisticated listening station right outside Turin, Italy. And look, this wasn't just some standard hobbyist's rig. It was remarkably capable of intercepting official Soviet space program frequencies. What they ended up recording on those tapes directly contradicted the clean, perfect public missions being broadcast by the Soviet state. Section 4. Voices in the Dark and the Recordings. What the Giudica Cordelia brothers actually captured on their tapes is deeply disturbing. They didn't just record static. They recorded what sounded like the very final moments of human beings trapped in the absolute vacuum of space. Let's walk through the timeline. In May 1960, the brothers' equipment picked up something absolutely unimaginable. It was a faint, agonizing heartbeat accompanied by telemetry data. You could hear the spacecraft slowly losing power, just helplessly drifting deeper and deeper into the endless dark. Then, skip to November 1960. The intercept was different. This time, it was a frantic SOS distress signal, tapped out in Morse code, originating from a capsule desperately orbiting the Earth. And then, the most famous one, May 1961. Just weeks after Gagarin's supposedly flawless first flight, they recorded a voice. It was the frantic, totally terrified voice of a Soviet woman screaming in Russian that her capsule was critically overheating. "I see a flame! Am I going to crash?" Those are the translated words of the screaming Russian woman recorded in May 1961. Just sit with that for a moment. Try to imagine the sheer horror of being strapped inside a failing machine, burning up in the upper atmosphere, entirely alone, all while the very country that sent you up there is actively preparing to pretend you never even existed. Section 5. The Soviet erasure and declassifying the cover-up. So when confronted with these deeply disturbing audio tapes, how did the official channels react? Well, the anatomy of this cover-up is pretty staggering. Throughout the Cold War, the official Soviet stance was complete, absolute denial. They totally dismissed the Giudica Cordelia brothers' claims, waving them away as fabricated Western propaganda. But the reality of the situation emerged after the fall of the USSR in the 1990s. Declassified documents revealed that the Soviet state absolutely did engage in systematic historical erasure. They regularly used airbrushing to edit deceased or disgraced cosmonauts completely out of official group photographs. If a government is willing to physically scrape a person's face off of a photograph to protect the state's image, suddenly the idea of covering up a doomed space mission becomes terrifyingly plausible. Section 6. A Frozen Silence and the Lingering Mystery. Even today, mainstream historians still heavily debate the authenticity of these recordings. Were those horrifying intercepts the actual voices of doomed humans? Or were they merely automated test signals broadcast by unmanned Soviet probes? The definitive truth remains locked away. Which leaves us staring directly into the abyss of the unknown, faced with this final, deeply unsettling question. Did space claim its first victims in total, frozen silence? Were there brave men and women who suffered the ultimate, lonely sacrifice, only to be entirely erased from the history of human achievement? The tapes still exist, the echoes remain, and the vast silence of space keeps its secrets. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the history you're handed.